All right, so this is your basic outline template for your informative essay. We're going to go through this step by step so that you know exactly what is expected of you for this essay. So we will start from the top. So you need to make sure that you take the time to go through everything on this outline. Even if you watch this video, it's very important for you to actually go into the hyperlinks that are included and attached so that you can see it and use it for yourself. This template is going to answer a lot of questions on how to properly write this paper. So like I said before, if I start reading your research paper and I see that some of the things that are outlined in this template are not being adhered to, I'm going to direct you right back to it and tell you need to go look at the outline template. So make sure that you really spend some time to go through this. So let's start off first with the formatting. So our formatting is pretty similar, I would say, to any other essay that you probably have written, with the exception of this being an APA format instead of MLA format. There aren't very many differences, but there are some, and we'll talk about those later. But for this informative essay, you're going to have 4 paragraphs, double spaced. You're going to have an introduction paragraph, 2 body paragraphs, and 1 conclusion. And then obviously you will have the thesis statement in your introduction. Your font is going to be Times New Roman or Calibri, Arial. Any of those like basic fonts are fine, but the size can be no larger than 12. So 11 to 12 is standard. So try to stay there. The requirement is that you have 1 cited quotation per paragraph, with the exception of your conclusion. Your conclusion is the only paragraph that you don't have to have a cited quotation, but your introduction and both of your body paragraphs do need to have a quotation. Now, if you see here, it says that it can be direct or in text. So make sure that you look back at the resources that I have provided for you, whether it is on the informational essay assignment itself, or if you look at the resources under classwork on Google Classroom. There are lots of resources available to you that show you how to do direct quotations and then in text quotations. So they are different and they are set up different. So make sure that you go back and look at those. And then lastly, you want to make sure always, the great thing about Google is that it pretty much grammar and spell checks everything for you. You just have to make sure that you pay attention to the mistakes that it is pointing out to you and that you actually correct the mistakes. Do not submit an essay with red or blue squiggly lines. There are no excuses. If Google is doing the corrections for you and identifying the mistakes for you, all you have to do is just make the fix. If you don't know how to do it, it's really simple. I can help you, but you just click on whatever is underlined and it pops up the suggested correction. So there's really no excuse for you to have a paper turned in that has all of those squiggly lines. So if I see them, I'm going to send it back and tell you that you need to do a spell check, grammar check before I will even look at it. For your sources, as you know, for this paper, you have to have at least 3 sources, which you have already found, and you are going to have a reference page at the end of your essay. So as you can see here, there is a hyperlink that you can click on to go for a guide. This is the one that I was telling you about before in the other lesson. This is the template that you can use to write your paper that's already formatted for you. So just keep that in mind. So the first part that you are going to work on, obviously, is your introduction. This here just tells you just a brief, review, I guess I could say, of what an introduction has. Some of you may have just come out of school. Some of you may have been out for a little while. So that's why I wanted to give you a little refresher. For an introduction paragraph, you always want to have a hook at the beginning, which is how you hook the reader in, how you get their interest right from the beginning. So as you can see, there is a hyperlink right here that you can click on that is a great resource and has some great ideas for how to write a hook. It's going to help you later too. Your hook can be a quote. It can be a statistic that you find really interesting, something really fascinating. It could be a lot of things. So you just want to make sure that you hook the reader in with something interesting. 1 to 2 sentences for your hook is sufficient. After your hook, you're going to move on to the background information. This is like the meat of your introduction paragraph. This is where you're going to explain to me what your topic is. So if I'm writing about minimum wage, this is where, I'm going to introduce it. What is minimum wage? I'm going to explain what it is, because you want to assume that your reader does not know what it is that you're talking about. You want to assume that the reader has never heard of this topic before. So this is the important information that the reader needs to know in order to understand your essay. Because if you're writing about minimum wage and I pick up your essay and I've never even heard of minimum wage, then without that background information, it's going to be hard for me to understand. Or, for example, if my topic is, as you can see here, de-extinction, I need to explain what that is in a way that my reader can understand. And this is where you can bring in a quotation. This is a great place for you to include your one citation that you have to have from your research, where you're explaining what it is. So a few sentences for your background information, 3 to 5 sentences is sufficient. And then at the end of your introduction, always at the end, is your thesis statement. So as you can see, there's a hyperlink that you can click here that brings you back to that video lesson that you should have already watched on how to write your thesis. But if you need a refresher, you can watch it again there. Your thesis is the last sentence of your intro paragraph that tells the reader in one statement what your essay is going to be about. A thesis statement in an informative essay versus an argumentative essay is very basic. Your argumentative thesis, when we get to that in Composition B, is much more sophisticated. This one is very basic. So, for example, if we're sticking with the de-extinction theme, my thesis statement might be, de-extinction is a controversial topic in the science community, period. And thesis statement, one sentence is fine. Okay, so that's going to be the first step. Okay, then once we get past the introduction, we will be moving on to the body paragraphs once your introduction is approved. So do not move on to the next step until your introduction has been approved. So your body paragraphs, you're going to have 2 of them. Each body paragraph needs to have the following things: a topic sentence. And as you can see here, there's another hyperlink with another resource for you to use. It explains what topic sentences are. It gives you some starter sentences that you can use in your essay. It's a really, really helpful resource that will help you on your next essay too, or on any essay that you have to write for school. So definitely hold on to that and use that. There's another hyperlinked document here. If you look at the bottom of that, it tells you how to integrate quotes. So the number one thing that I see in essays is that people just kind of plop a quote in the middle of a paragraph, and I like to call those floating quotes. So if you see that term in your feedback, that's what I'm referring to. You don't have, if it's a floating quote, that means there's no lead in, there's no introduction to that quote, there's nothing. So make sure that when you find a quote that supports your claim or your thesis, that you explain it. Be thorough and integrate it properly. So make sure that you look at those resources that I have included for you that will help you with how to properly integrate your quotes. And then, as we discussed before, a minimum of 3 sources must be used. As you use an article and quote it, you need to put it on your reference page. If you don't use the article, don't put it on your reference page. If you find that some of the articles that you have don't have enough information, you can certainly find more. You don't have to stick with just 3. And if you want to go out and find more, that's probably good anyway, because you're going to need to find more sources for your next essay anyway. So if you find that you need to go find more sources for this essay, then you'll just be ahead of the game later. So it's okay to have more than 3, but you cannot have less. So just make sure that if you have the source on your reference page that you have used it. If you're not using it, do not put it on the reference page, because that's a quick way for your paper to not pass. So here's another hyperlink for that APA citation generator that we have already talked about a couple times, the Scribr, that actually when you copy and paste the website link into it, it will cite it for you. So make sure that you go back and look at the video that I sent out about that before. But that is a super, super helpful resource to use. If your article does not have a date, you cannot use it, period. Full stop. If there's no date, you can't use it. I know sometimes that is really unfortunate because you find one that has some great information, but if there's no date, you can't use it. I'm sorry. And then after your body paragraphs are approved, we will do probably 1 or 2 at a time. Then you will move on to the last section, which is the conclusion, which some people think is the hardest part. Some people think it's the easiest part. It just kind of depends on what kind of writer you are. So you're going to use that same document to help with the sentence starters for the conclusion paragraph. Your conclusion is just where you're restating the main points that you talked about. You're restating your thesis in just different words. Okay, you're just saying it in a different way. You're tying everything up. So now you've introduced your topic. You've given me all the information that I need to know about it. Now you're just going to kind of wrap it up. Click here on this hyperlink for another awesome resource that can help you with your conclusion paragraphs. Okay. Lots of good information there if you're stuck. You want to make sure that you end your essay with a strong call to action. This is more or less, I would say, for the argumentative essay, but it can also be applied here too. So your ending of your conclusion, you just need to make it a strong ending. Okay. We're not really going to talk about the call to action for this one, but we will talk about that more with your argumentative essay. So you don't really have to worry about that part. So those are the main parts of the essay that you are going to do. Just remember that you're not going to just take this and just write the whole entire essay. We're going to do it in parts. Okay. You're going to do the introduction first. It will get approved or not approved. You'll work on that until it fits, and then you'll move on to your body paragraphs and then your conclusion. And that's the same way we're going to do our argumentative research paper in Composition B. So happy writing.